As a captain and co-captain of Team USA Wheelchair Rugby, Joe Delagrave brings a world of experience and knowledge to the table. Having earned both a Paralympic silver and bronze medal, Delagrave now serves as an interim head coach. Welcome, Joe.
Hey, Bob. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Hey, Joe, with, 13 times being named to the national team, all your accolades and everything that you bring to the table, you have a tall task in front of you still going into the Paris Games in 2024. How are you looking forward to that?
I'm excited about the challenge. Been coach of the team for the last year, and then we've got about double that time leading up to Paris, and so or a little less than double that time. But excited. Our first year I thought was pretty successful. Obviously, we fell short at World Championships and coming in 3 points of the gold medal, and that's happened a couple times recently where we've gotten second in Tokyo, second in Rio, second now at the 22 World Championships. But excited about where we're at, where we're headed, and where the program's headed from a cultural standpoint.
Man, and thanks for saying that, because I want to dip below the, how hard hitting the sport is and how tough the chairs are and the points out on the court, because, that's been pretty well addressed, and I think people really get the game. So here you are, you've got a lot of years under your belt, and, I'd like to dip into this a little bit deeper. So, I would say, as I look at where you're at, you're probably about a fourth generation player in the game. A game that started in 1976 up in Canada. They called it murder ball. It was rough, getting the sport off the ground. But here you are, you came into a pretty developed game. I'm just kind of curious, man, like, how do you think a sport like quad rugby or murder ball, how did it get going, and why did this sport stick? So many other sports tried, but this sport made it.
Yeah, it's an interesting piece. When I talk to people about the history of the sport, because I think it's fascinating, it's born out of innovation, much like any sport is, but this one being such a baby in the realm of sports and even adaptive sports. And I think one of the reasons it's stuck is there's elements from all different areas of sport, basketball and ice hockey, a little bit of soccer, and it's just evolved in this beautiful way, really fast as well. I mean, gosh, like you said, 1976, some guys in the gym just decided, hey, let's try to figure this out. We're not able enough to play wheelchair basketball, or at least, when we're competitively, we're just sitting on the sidelines. Let's figure this out. And
having to throw picks. Yeah.
Yeah. And then from there, it's going from everyday chairs to sport specific chairs and companies that are wheelchair rugby specific with their chairs. And so that part of it's been really interesting. And I think one of the reasons that it's stuck around is the camaraderie aspect of it. I think that's what makes all sports kind of stick around in the adaptive space, especially. We're all looking for, let's not lie to ourselves. We're like, most of us are looking for somewhere to plug in. Humans are social creatures, and we're looking for someone to plug in. I was the same way when I was 19, looking for a sport, 20 years old, looking for a sport after my accident, and found this sport, and yeah, I gravitated towards, people are hitting, but really it was like this group of people that looked like me as far as my disability goes, and that's kind of what kept me coming back. Yes, there was competition, and there was working out, but I was like, I'm just curious about how is this dude that has less function than I do getting in and out of his vehicle by himself, going to the bathroom by himself. So like, the social aspect, I think, of wheelchair rugby and the camaraderie, I think, has made this sport kind of its glue and be able to stick around for the last 50 years now.
Joe, I understand exactly what you're saying. I'm sort of a higher level para, and, I found myself tinkering with basketball, and lo and behold, I knew what I was going to do was get an occasional shot, and I was going to be throwing a lot of picks. So naturally, having been a runner, I transferred into wheelchair racing, which, was an instant gravitation to me. I mean, it really, you look at you look at these sports and why they stick for you. It's a very individual thing, but at the end of the day, these are the things that propel us forward, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Just in general, I look at the sporting world and what it does. I hate to go down the inspirational angle here, but the bottom line is that it really opens a lot of doors. I just know that, as a 19-year-old myself, going into the game, I figured a lot of things out that really helped me to move forward in life. Sports does that, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. I think adaptive sports, and honestly, probably able-bodied sports as well, especially for men and women that gravitate towards that competitive fire and spirit and use sport as a vehicle for that. And I think, you touched a little bit on the inspirational words. Maybe we'll go there for a second. I think in a lot of different ways throughout my career. And in the rugby world, there's a lot of people that kind of run away from that word, which I get, but at the same time, I think there's a little bit of responsibility within that word that I would love for our community to champion. Because I look at the 19-year-old kid that's coming to the sport, and none of the guys that when I showed up in that gym were all that good at wheelchair rugby. They'd say the same thing, but they changed my life by inspiring me. They truly did, just in the sense of living out their life with a disability. That to me, as a 19-year-old kid that's very naive, has nothing. I don't know how to do a wheelie, jump off a curtain, nothing. I knew nothing. I was such a greenie when it came to the wheelchair life, and for me, that was life changing. Sport, in its essence, can be very rehabilitative, and I think you hear that from a lot of professional athletes in able-bodied sports as well, where the football clubs save their life, the basketball court saved their life. So it's sport is able to kind of pluck you out of whatever situation you're in and then teach you lessons. And I think the basketball court, the rugby court, the wheelchair, what your racing course, it's the best classroom out there because you get to learn life lessons that stick. And now for me as a dad, get to implement them into my kids.
Frankly, Joe, it was even kind of more than what happened out on the course. It was what happened while you were out on the road. Being a little tough on each other was sort of reminded me of being in the locker room. And, I can recall a time on the way to an award ceremony being pitched out of my chair by a rock. And, as soon as my friends realized I didn't break a leg, I was instantly laughed at. And that was, in a way, it was kind of healthy.
Yeah, it's so good. I'm laughing here, not at you. Maybe if I saw you do that, I would have, but no,
I'm sure you would have.
Yeah, but you're spot on with that, because it's the support group on wheels that is a true locker room where you're going to catch some crap, which is so healthy, because it makes you realize I'm in a beautiful way, all right, I'm just another guy in the locker room. We all happen to have disabilities, but we're it's the same stuff you're going to talk about and whatnot. And yeah, I couldn't agree more. Definitely have my fair share of spilling on the floor and having my buddies take pictures before they even thought about maybe helping me out if I needed it or whatnot. But
and some of those war stories are the best, aren't they? Hey man, there's about, from everything I've learned, there's about 25 active countries now playing rugby. But as I look at the top, it seems to be prevailing, the same countries seem to sort of be prevailing: Great Britain, Australia, Japan, New Zealand, the United States. What countries are coming up that you see that may be starting to slide into that spot where they might be looking at the podium on the highest level?
Yeah, I think, there's a couple that come to mind that haven't necessarily medaled in the Paralympics or World Championships. France is one of them. obviously hosting the Paris Paralympics, and Denmark just finished fourth at World Championships, and they've got a really good squad. They've got a former USA athlete, Jason Regier, coaching them, and so they're well coached there. South America has gotten better. Brazil and Colombia specifically were both at World Championships, and so like they've risen their game, which is great for Pan American Games and great for our region, to see those teams start to get up there where they're in the top, can knock on the door in the top 8 and then potentially get a medal. So that's super exciting for us.
When you talk about some of those people moving out from or moving on from our country and helping other countries, you've got, Kevin Orr over in Japan. He's been working with the Japanese team. And then back in the earliest of days, I remember this from the Murder Ball movie, there was Joe Soares who went up to Canada, but he had a pretty big grudge. He was holding that monkey on his back. And boy, I got to say, he looked pretty ticked off about things, but that's good too. But ultimately, when people move on like that, like a Joe or a Kevin, is it looked at as a betrayal or for them to go and help other countries, or do you think it's healthy?
I personally think it's healthy. I think that's the nature of sport. I think Murder Ball was an amazing movie. Obviously, it was a tool to get more people to play the sport of wheelchair rugby, but the whole betrayal piece, I think at the end of the day, if someone can go get a job coaching wheelchair rugby, I mean, goodness gracious, that seems like a win to me. I think raising the level of the sport, to 25 to 30 countries playing it with some developing countries there, and hopefully getting more, only makes our product better, only makes the sport better. I think competition is healthy. It's we just finished the hardest world championships that we've had in our history of the sport. And so things like that, I think, are super healthy for the growth of the sport. You got to look big picture. I think there can be some tough times where feelings are hurt and whatnot, but at the same time, it's all growing the sport and the movement along, and I think that's something that's good.
Double Paralympic medalist Joe Delagrave joining us. Joe, it's pretty easy when you think back on memorable wins and memorable, and certainly those really tough defeats. But somehow those tough defeats always seem to stand out in your brain a little bit more. But anything in particular over your 13, 14 years playing the game that really stick out in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, my lowest point as an athlete was probably the most pivotal and important for me. It was 2016 when I was left off the national team going to Rio, and trained through that entire quad and ended up not making it. And it would have been easy to just play the blame game and point the finger. And I've talked about it before, where people have kind of talked and asked me about it, and maybe for a year it was like, it was my coach's fault and assistant coach's fault and everyone else is getting line. But then there's a time where you look in the mirror and you go how can I be better as an athlete? How can I be better as a leader? And it definitely realigns some priorities in my life, and nothing was crazy off, but at the same time, I think it's helped me as a coach really, number one, relate to guys that have been cut or are being cut. And then number two is really speak from an authentic standpoint of personal responsibility. And I think every athlete that's successful looks in the mirror and figures out their weaknesses and gets better at it, and looks in the mirror and go, how can I get better to help the team? How can I get better to push my teammates forward? So I think that's probably one of the most pivotal moments in my career. I didn't know if I was going to come back, and then I decided to come back, and really that next quad would set me up to learn a lot about who I am and what it takes, and I think it's helped me become a young coach as well.
Well, from a world-class player to a world-class coach, thank you so much for the insights, man. Your legacy lives on. Thank you, Joe Delagrave.
Appreciate it, Bob. Thank you.